Hey everybody, I'm just doing something a little bit different with Kerbal Space Program today. Yeah, uh, lots instead of lots of music, which I'm kind of running out of. But anyway, instead of lots of music, I'm just gonna sit here and I'm gonna talk about what I'm doing here. I'm launching a fuel source that I'm gonna take out to Minmus, to the station that I've got out there, and yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a whole lot to talk about. It's just sort of a spur of the moment thing, just see how it goes around, how it goes over. I don't really think that I really have a whole lot to say yet. It's so boring. Why am I? Yeah. Anyway, uh, I can't think of anything to talk about because this is just a slow launch. Yeah, a slow launch of a big, huge orange fuel tank. Uh, Now I know point .9 beta has come out, and there's this episode and one more episode that I'm using in point .25 alpha. And once those are over, then I'm going to restart with the new point .9 career mode, which is actually kind of interesting. I just started that, so I'm going to save all of that for those episodes. But just so you know, I th- I do some rather I do some rather interesting things in this episode. Like I said, I'm getting the elliptical. Yeah, what is it? The eccentric? No, not eccentric. Inclination. I'm getting the inclination ready for Minmus, which now that I'm thinking about it, I should probably be doing farther out to save fuel. But whatever. I just gotta get it where I need it to be, so I can rendezvous with that big nuclear-powered space capsule thing that I built. The one that picked up the Kerbals from that fiasco on the moon a few episodes back. Yeah, that was not the smoothest landing. Twice. Oh boy. Yeah, here we go. Space station. I'm not actually docking with the space station, I'm just getting it close. And I think that, because I'm doing all of this post editing, because otherwise my voice would just be speeding up and then slowing down and going around and doing all this uh, crazy speed talking. And right now, yeah, here we go. This thing. I don't really have a name for it. I never made a name for it. I just called it the nuclear shuttle because that's really all it was. The nuclear shuttle. And there's the orbital space station, just all stock parts. That's still a fun one. And there's the fuel tank, called FT1. How wonderfully creative. Well, whatever. More iterations in the career mode should create a lot more interesting alphanumeric names. I usually give them alphanumeric names because it's easier to keep track of them in the build window. Because you've got like 1A, 1B, 2B, 2A, 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 1, and then it gets like these really long, crazy streams, which you will be seeing, as I said, in later episodes. But yeah, this is just the usual standard docking, long distance docking. I was actually really proud of the time when I docked this and the atmospheric shuttle at the same time. That was actually rather interesting, rather fun at the time. Switching back and forth, changing the little velocity vectors, making sure everything's. Yeah, and I had to eject that because it was just making it it's impossible to control. And now it's just floating around. I really don't care about orbital debris. I never really have because, well, you never really generate enough in KSP to really bother. There was that time I actually tried to create an artificial Kessler syndrome. That's when you get a whole bunch of debris in orbit and effectively blocks orbits off. But it didn't block out orbits so much as just created a lot of things for the computer to have to process, which wasn't very good. It just slowed everything all down way too much. And yeah, here we come in for a nighttime docking. I don't like doing nighttime dockings, even though I try to put lots of lights on things, just so I can see it, and other ones mostly so you guys can see it. But yeah, nighttime dockings are kind of difficult. I was gonna say something else before I started talking about other things. Uh, Talking about orbital debris. Uh, Mostly, like I said, I never really bothered with orbital debris because, well, orbital debris is a sign of a healthy spacefaring civilization, because that means that there's life, intelligent life, going there and leaving stuff behind. Because one of the signs of human civilization, that you are close to human civilization, is all the garbage. The less garbage you see, the farther away from civilization you are. So it's kind of like a marker of civilization that you'll see, little bits of trash and ejected boosters and empty fuel tanks just kind of floating around. Just floating out there, just saying, hey, look, we're here, we got stuff in orbit. Because there are things in orbit currently around Earth that have been up there since, like, the early 60s. One of the Apollo boosters is actually in solar orbit, orbiting around the sun, and I think it was the, which one was it? I think it was Apollo 8 that, the Apollo 8 lunar transfer stage, the one that sent them from Earth orbit out to the moon, basically went sailing on past the moon, and it went off into solar orbit, and we lost track of this thing. They could not find it. They did not know where it was until an amateur astronomer found what he thought was an Earth-crossing asteroid, and it turned out it was actually the Apollo booster, which is actually kind of interesting. Yeah. So it just goes to show you that, what was the point I was trying to make? I don't even know what the point I was trying to make. Something interesting, I hope. But yeah, talking about things being left on other planets. I always think there's like, along with all like the moon denying or conspiracy people, there's also people who say there's aliens on the moon and NASA knows about them, and that's what the moon missions were about. And then you've got the people who say no, we never went to the moon because Stanley Kubrick filmed it all. But that's a whole other ridiculous can of worms that's best left for another time. But anyway, going on the alien artifacts on the moon. There actually are alien artifacts on the moon. Things that we left on the moon. The descent stage. The moon buggies. Bags of astronaut poop is on the moon. Just sitting there. In a bag. On the moon. Just think about that for a second. It's rather disgusting. In a fascinating sort of way. But anyway, yes, there are alien artifacts on the moon. 6 sites that were put there about, 45, 50... off the top of my head, I don't really know. I'm bad at math. But yes, we put them there, along with all of the probes. There's even a Chinese probe on there now that went there and drove a few feet, died. Yeah. Space is hard. Space will kill you. It doesn't care about you. Yeah. Well, anyway, uh, what's happening here? I'm flying off to Minmus. Now, I always liked Minmus. This is this tiny little green dot way out, and it never gets enough love. Minmus never gets enough love from the pilots. It's always the moon, and then once people get tired of the moon, they go off to Duna or Eve, or especially Jewel. People seem to love the moon and Jewel, with Duna and Eve close behind. But I like Minmus, and I kind of like Drez. I would like Elo, but it's really just a little bit too far away, and Moho is just too difficult to get to. It's just too difficult to get to. I have a hard time getting there. But Minmus is great. Just a little bit of an inclination change to make it challenging. Just far enough away that you need to bring a little extra rocket power with you. Makes the nuclear engines kind of useful. And low enough gravity that you could literally take off from the surface with a whole bunch of RCS. Which I might actually do that sometime. That sounds like it might be kind of fun. Oh well, that's for another thing for another time. More little bits of just making sure everything lines up. We're rendezvousing with the Minmus station, made out of station expansion parts. Call it Hab 1 for Habitat 1. Again, my wonderfully creative naming schemes. Boy. And what I was planning on doing with the Minmus station is making it a fuel depot, and then having landers go back and forth from the surface to the station. And what I was going to do is have a big fuel tank, have this thing, and then have this thing, this nuclear shuttle here, transfer people and other smaller tanks to and from Minmus. Bring people, bring them down, bring down little. I was thinking about actually like building like a little like colony outpost. That would be kind of cool. I've always wanted to use the resource mods, but they always seem to just they never behave for me. It either just crashes on startup, or it just doesn't work. I have bad luck with resource mods, which I really get upset with. And again, I'm having trouble keeping this thing oriented because I forgot to put RCS on the booster. And, yeah, I had to eject that. That didn't work out too well. No. Oh well. Oh well. Oh well. Oh well. Oh well.